Officer Ray Maddox pulled his gun at a quiet gas station, convinced he was stopping a car thief. But the man he aimed at, Darius Cole, never flinched. Even with a gun inches from his chest, moments later, a silver military tag slipped from his pocket, revealing a truth that would shatter Ray's world. How does a hero end up staring down the barrel of a cop's gun? If this moment gripped your heart, hit the like button and share this story with someone who believes respect must be earned, not assumed. Now, let's begin the story. I was there that morning in Riverside, Alabama, first lights skimming off the station windows. The kind of quiet you only get before the highway wakes up. The pumps clicked like metronomes. A robin hopped under the canopy, and a soft breeze tugged at the paper flags strung along the awning. It was ordinary. The kind of ordinary you never expect to remember. At pump 3 stood a tall black man, late 30s, broad-shouldered, face set like old stone but eyes warm. I'd learn his name later, Darius Cole. He was filling a dusty silver Ford pickup, the kind that's seen a lot of miles and every kind of weather. No hurry about him. He checked the nozzle, glanced at the price, then looked up as the station door squeaked. Elena Vega stepped out to prop the door with a rubber wedge. She's Latina, early 30s, hair tied in a quick bun, the kind of smile that makes you feel the day might go your way after all. She headed for the caddy of windshield squeegees, tugged one free, then frowned at a stubborn cap on the cleaning solution. Darius noticed. He set the pump handle on its latch, walked over, and twisted the cap with a patient half-turn. It gave. Elena let out a small laugh, a slice of real life in the middle of nowhere. You've got gentle hands. Sire, she said. Darius shrugged, almost embarrassed. Patience beats force every time. I don't know why that line stuck to the morning air, but it did. Maybe because you could feel it belonged to him, like it had been earned somewhere harder than a gas station. He went back to pump 3. Elena watched him a second longer than strangers usually do. Then the quiet changed. A patrol cruiser drifted in from the highway, lights flicking red and blue across the glass. No siren, just the hush of authority. It rolled to a stop, angled across pump 4, boxing the pickup without touching it. My stomach did that small. I mean, tightening it does when you realize the next few minutes could go sideways. The driver's door opened. Officer Ray Maddox stepped out, white, early 40s, tall, fit in the way men get fit by habit, not vanity. His eyes scanned the lot as if it were a script he already knew by heart. One hand adjusted the radio on his shoulder, the other hovered near his sidearm. Not touching, but close enough to make you notice. His jaw worked once, like he was bracing for a flavor he didn't like. He didn't start with hello. That your truck, he called across the pumps. Darius turned, one hand still on the nozzle. Yes. Officer. Anything wrong? Maddox didn't come closer right away. He watched Darius the way men watch a dark water line when they're not sure what's underneath. Later, I'd hear he'd been ambushed the year before, on a routine stop, one of those split-second nightmares that never really clocks out. You could see that history riding shotgun with him now. Step away from the vehicle, hands where I can see them, he said, voice harder this time. The breeze fell out of the canopy like a curtain. Darius nodded once. Slow, like he'd been here before in some other form. He set the nozzle back, clicked the latch, and took a single step from the truck, palms empty, fingers spread just enough to say, I'm not hiding anything. Elena stood very still by the door, a takeaway cup warming her hands. I could hear the soft scrape as she set it on the ledge. I've got my ID and registration in my wallet. Darius said, steady. Don't reach. Maddox snapped. The kind of reflex that's more muscle memory than choice. He took 2 strides closer, squaring himself to the man in front of him, to the truck behind him, to the morning that had lost its balance. The silence turned loud. Darius breathed once. The slow kind you do when you're trying to keep everything small and safe. "I can set the wallet on the hood," he offered, voice still low, still respectful, like he was negotiating with a skittish horse. Maddox's eyes narrowed to slits. I could see the calculus firing behind them plate matches. Véhicule description. The echo of a partner shouting gun from some old memory. His right hand rose the last inch it needed. The gun cleared leather. It was not a dramatic flourish. Not in real life. It was practiced. Controlled. Terrifying in its clarity. The muzzle found Darius's chest as if it had been headed there all morning. Elena flinched. The cup kissed concrete and cracked. Coffee bleeding into a small brown fan. Everything after that lived inside a thimble of time. The robin vanished. A truck rattled by on the highway and forgot us. Somewhere, a cash register beeped. A tiny, oblivious beep. Darius didn't move. No raised voice. No fast hands. Just a man standing square to a barrel with his shoulders down and his chin level. If he was afraid, he kept it where we couldn't reach it. "You really don't want to pull that trigger." "Officer," he said, not a threat, not a dare, a warning to a stranger. He apparently cared enough to save from himself. Maddox's forearms trembled the way a bridge does when a heavy train rolls across. He shifted a half step to his left, clearing an angle on the truck, checking windows, mirrors, every reflective surface that might hide a second story. His face wasn't hate. His face was history, bad history, trying to predict the future. Elena's phone appeared in her hand like it had grown there. She lifted it chest high. Thumbs braced. Camera open. The lens held on the space between the muzzle and the man. Her mouth was a hard line. I remember thinking, this is how mourning becomes evidence. "Sir," Darius said, "I'll follow every instruction you give me." He swallowed. "Just don't mistake calm for danger." Maddox's voice came thin with adrenaline. "On your knees." Darius's eyes flicked once to Elena, to the small black circle recording us all, then back to the man with the gun. For a second I thought he'd say no. Not out of pride, but because you could feel he had spent a lifetime earning the right to stand. Instead, he nodded again. The smallest surrender, and began to lower. The pump clunked as the auto stop kicked in on his truck. The sound was indecently normal. I won't tell you I knew how it would end. I didn't. No one did. We were all held inside that stretched out second where anything is possible and nothing is certain. The sun was up. You could feel it warm on your forearms. See it throw clean shadows from the pump numbers onto the concrete. But in that patch of morning, light lost its voice. The sun had risen, but reason hadn't. And just like that, the easy day broke clean in half. Ray's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "That truck matches a stolen vehicle out of Birmingham," he said, eyes locked on Darius. "That story sound familiar to you?" Darius lifted his hand slightly. Still calm. "I can explain, no explaining." Ray snapped. Hands up. Now you could feel the shift, the kind that makes air heavy. Elena ducked behind the counter, her hands trembling. But instinct kicked in. She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over record. "Lord, don't let this go wrong." She whispered and hit the button. Darius moved slow, deliberate. The way soldiers move when they know sudden motions can get you killed. He reached for his wallet. Every inch a quiet apology to the world watching. The gun stayed aimed squarely at him. "I'm reaching for my ID." Darius said. That's all. The moment he opened the wallet, Something silver slipped from between the folds and fell, a small military tag, spinning once before hitting the pavement. The sunlight caught it just right, making it flash like a mirror to heaven. Elena zoomed in instinctively. The words engraved on it were clear as day: U.S. Navy Special Ops. Her breath caught. "Oh my God," she muttered, barely audible. But Ray didn't even glance down. His jaw stayed tight. The gun never wavered. To everyone watching, that tag wasn't just a piece of metal. It was truth trying to speak. Across the street, a man filling his tank whispered to his wife. "That's a soldier's tag." Ray's voice cut him off. "All I see is a suspect." The couple froze, unsure which was more dangerous, the gun or the blindness behind it. Elena's hands shook as she filmed. Her whisper trembled through the phone's microphone. "That's not a suspect. That's a soldier." Ray stepped closer, tension vibrating off him. "Down on the ground, do it now." Darius didn't move right away. He looked straight at the camera in Elena's hands. His voice came steady, soft but sharp enough to pierce through fear. "Don't stop filming," he said. "The truth deserves witnesses." You could feel it, every syllable weighted with the kind of dignity that doesn't ask for permission. Elena's breathing was ragged. The lens shook. Around them, time seemed to bend, caught between right and wrong. Ray barked again, louder this time. On the ground, slowly, Darius dropped to one knee. The sun glinted off that tag still lying in the dirt, its shine almost defiant. Ray's boots scraped the pavement as he moved in, the gun shadow cutting across Darius's chest. Elena whispered a prayer no one could hear. And right there, with a weapon drawn and a camera rolling, the line between protector and aggressor blurred completely. Darius didn't plead, didn't beg. He just knelt, eyes steady, shoulders squared like a man who'd faced worse and refused to break here. I remember the way he said it again, quieter this time, maybe to himself. "Let them see." That moment hit harder than any gunshot could. The world didn't know it yet, but a reckoning had just begun. The second cruiser pulled into the lot, its lights swirling red and blue across the pale morning concrete, but no siren. The quiet made it worse somehow, like danger had decided to whisper instead of shout. The driver's door opened and out stepped Officer Lucas, young, barely 25, face still too clean for the job. His posture said eager to serve, but his eyes said, "I don't know what the hell I just walked into." "Sir." He's not resisting, Lucas called out, trying to sound steady. Ray didn't even glance at him. "Then make sure he stays that way." The words hit the ground heavier than the boots that followed them. Lucas hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. He wasn't used to scenes like this. Nobody ever trains you for the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. Darius was already on the pavement, his cheek pressed to the gritty concrete. You could hear the faint scrape of his skin against it as he turned his head just enough to breathe. The cuffs clamped tight around his wrists, steel biting into skin. Yet his voice, when it came, was calm, level, impossibly human. "Freedom sure feels different lying face down," he murmured. Ray's jaw tightened. He looked like a man who'd rather shoot the moment than think about it. From behind the counter, Elena's voice cracked the air. "He didn't do anything," she shouted. Ray's gun swung toward her before she could blink. "Get inside." "Ma'am," now she froze, tears cutting through her fear, but the phone stayed up, red light still blinking. Her breath trembled into the microphone, each inhale a prayer she didn't have words for. Out on the ground, Darius turned his head slightly. The movement was small, almost respectful. His eyes found the American flag fluttering on the pole above the station, bright, clean, waving like it didn't see what was happening beneath it. He stared at it for a long moment, maybe too long, because suddenly his eyes weren't in the present anymore. You could tell by the way his jaw softened he was somewhere else. Somewhere louder, somewhere with dust and gunfire. The flag over him melted into a different one, the one he'd saluted every morning in a desert that never slept. He remembered the blast, the blood, the sound of his friends screaming for a medic who'd never come. He remembered dragging a man twice his size through smoke thick enough to chew. He remembered coming home and promising himself that peace would finally mean something. And now, here he was, face in the dirt, in the country he'd fought for. Through the haze of memory, a softer voice slipped in his mother's voice, clean and firm like Sunday morning hymns. Never let hate build a home inside you. Son, he could almost feel her hand on the back of his neck. Steadying him, he took a slow breath and let it go, like she'd taught him, letting the anger slide out instead of burying it. When he opened his eyes again, the flag came back into focus. The hum of the highway returned. So did the faces around him. Ray's hard mask, Elena's shaking hands, Lucas's uncertainty. And that's when he noticed the young officer's boots, brand new leather streaked with dried mud. The kind that still smelled like training grounds and fresh mistakes. Darius smiled faintly, barely enough to see. You just came out of training. Huh, he said, voice low, almost kind. Lucas blinked, startled that the man on the ground was talking to him. Sir Darius turned his head a little more, meeting the young cop's eyes. Don't dirty your soul like your boots. The words landed heavy, heavier than the cuffs, heavier than the silence. Lucas froze. His throat moved like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. His grip on Darius's shoulder loosened, just a fraction. Ray snapped. Lucas, the rookie, jolted, hands snapping back into place. But his face had changed. The kind of change that doesn't wash off. Everything went quiet again. Not peaceful quiet, the kind that hurts your ears. The kind where everyone's heart is beating so loud, you can almost hear it in the air. Elena's camera trembled, zooming in on Darius's face. You could see the gravel pressed into his skin, a single bead of blood tracing down toward his jawline. He wasn't fighting it. He wasn't even angry. That's what made it unbearable. Why isn't he yelling? Lucas whispered. Why isn't he? Darius interrupted him, his voice steady as stone. Because shouting never freed a man. Even Ray hesitated at that. Just a second. Then he knelt beside him, knee on the pavement, eyes scanning the tag still glinting near the truck tire, the tag he hadn't yet seen. Elena's camera caught it again. Sunlight bouncing off the words U.S. Navy Special Ops. Lucas saw it this time. His lips parted. Sir? Ray cut him off. Not now. But it was too late. The truth was already out there, caught in pixels and light. The world just hadn't seen it yet. Darius closed his eyes, his voice turning inward, like he was speaking to himself or to someone far away. You can strip a man's dignity, but you can't rewrite what he's done. Ray's jaw flexed again. He looked at Darius, then at the rookie beside him. You could see the battle behind his eyes, the same war he'd been fighting since that ambush a year ago. Fear had worn his badge longer than he had. Lucas swallowed hard. Sir, what if he's telling the truth? Ray didn't answer. He couldn't. The silence spoke louder than orders ever could. Elena stepped out from behind the counter again, holding her phone high. I got everything, she said. Her voice trembled, but her hands didn't. Ray turned his head toward her, glare sharp as broken glass. Put that down. She didn't move. No. Officer, the truth deserves witnesses. That line hung there, connecting them all: the soldier, the rookie, the cop, the woman with the camera, four strangers held together by fear, duty, and something that looked a lot like shame. For a heartbeat, the world stopped spinning. Then the wind picked up again. The flag flapped louder this time, almost angry. And Darius, still on the ground, whispered something only the dirt could hear. Not again. The sound of it crawled under your skin. Quiet, but unshakable. He'd been hunted before, but never by the people he swore to protect. The patrol car rolled out of the gas station lot, tires crunching over gravel. The sound swallowed by the low hum of the engine. No one spoke. No radio chatter. No small talk. Just the kind of silence that feels too heavy to sit in. Ray drove. Eyes locked straight ahead. Hands at 10 and 2, like a man gripping more than just a steering wheel. His face didn't move, but you could feel the war breaking out behind it. One part duty, one part doubt, and something darker he didn't want to name. In the back seat, Darius sat upright, wrists cuffed in front of him, shoulders straight. His gaze drifted out the window, following the blur of pine trees and sunlight flickering between them. The morning had turned cruelly bright. A slice of light caught the side of his neck, and that's when I saw it: a thin scar. Small, but deep. The kind that doesn't heal on the inside. He turned his head slightly, the light tracing it like a memory trying to be remembered. Lucas drove in silence, glancing now and then at the rearview mirror. He couldn't look too long. He didn't know if he was supposed to, but he couldn't stop either. He saw the way Darius breathed. Calm and measured, the way soldiers do when everything around them is chaos. Finally, the rookie couldn't take it anymore. "Sir," he said softly, "that tag, it's real military." Ray's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The leather creaked. "Keep driving," he snapped, even though he was the one driving. But his eyes betrayed him. They flicked up to the mirror just for a second and landed on something hanging from Darius's neck. A small silver cross, simple, old, worn down from years of touch. The same kind his brother, Daniel, used to wear before that day in Helmand. For a heartbeat, Ray forgot how to breathe. He blinked, forcing the road back into focus. But the image burned behind his eyelids anyway. He didn't know why that small cross burned his eyes. Outside, the landscape rolled by rusted mailboxes, lonely gas pumps, a faded church steeple. Inside, it was a different kind of storm. Ray's mind flickered between now and then: sand, smoke. The letter that came home without a body, killed in action Sergeant Daniel Maddox. He'd read that line so many times it had stopped being words. Now, sitting feet away from this man, the man he'd just pinned to the ground, something in him started to tremble. But he fought it down. Guilt was a luxury men like him couldn't afford. In the rear view, Lucas watched both of them, the silent soldier and the officer, trying not to fall apart. His chest felt tight. Like he'd walked into a scene his conscience didn't know how to leave. Back at the gas station, Elena Vega sat on the floor behind the counter, phone in hand, replaying the video again and again. Her reflection stared back from the cracked screen, eyes wide, voice shaking, a witness to something she couldn't undo. She hesitated for a long minute. Then she typed the caption, "He did nothing wrong," and pressed upload. The video blinked once, then went live. Within minutes, notifications began to explode across her screen. Likes, shares, comments. The algorithm had found its next truth to feed on. Back in the car, Darius stared at the passing world without really seeing it. His thoughts were quieter than the road, but sharper than the cuffs biting into his wrists. He'd fought wars that made no sense. He'd buried brothers for flags that sometimes forgot their names. And yet, the hardest battle always seemed to come after the uniform was folded away. He whispered to himself, voice low enough for no one to hear, maybe this is the war I was meant to finish. Lucas caught the movement in the mirror, but not the words. He thought maybe Darius had just been praying. Ray's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. The light turned red ahead. The car slowed to a stop. For a moment, all three sat in stillness. The kind that hums with unspoken things. No one fired a gun. No blood spilled. But the battleground was real. A war fought in silence. In fear. In the small space between perception and truth, the light turned green. But no one seemed to notice. The car kept moving. And inside that cramped patrol unit, 3 lives were about to collide with the weight of everything they thought they knew. They brought Darius into the interrogation room just after noon. The place smelled like coffee gone cold, and fear trying to hide behind cheap paint. The walls were gray, windowless. A single bulb hummed above the metal table, throwing a hard white light onto his face. No words were said for the first minute. You could hear the clock tick somewhere behind the mirror. Ray Maddox stood on the other side of the table, arms folded, shoulders locked. He hadn't spoken since they left the gas station. Now he just stared. Darius sat straight in the metal chair, hands cuffed to the ring bolted into the table. His eyes didn't wander. He didn't plead. He simply waited. Finally, Ray broke the silence. You think that tag makes you innocent? Darius looked up. Voice even. No. He said, it makes me responsible. That answer landed like a stone in water, quiet, but with ripples that wouldn't stop. Ray smirked. But it wasn't the kind of smirk that came from confidence. You soldiers think you're heroes. He said, voice dripping with bitterness. But all you do is bring pain. You bring it over there. And you bring it back here. Darius's eyes stayed on him. And you think you're peacekeepers, he said softly. But you fear peace more than war. The line hit harder than shouting ever could. For a second, you could see it in Ray's face. Something cracked. He blinked, jaw tight. He stepped closer, palms pressing against the cold metal of the table. You don't know anything about me, he said. No, Darius replied. But I know what fear does to men. It makes them aim before they see. That did it. Ray slammed his fist against the table. The sound sharp enough to bounce off the walls. The mirror behind him quivered. Lucas, who had been standing near the door, flinched but didn't speak. The silence afterward was unbearable. You could almost hear Ray's heartbeat in the room. Then the door opened. The hinges squeaked. And in walked a man in uniform, Captain Thomas Harris. Gray at the temples, medals polished. Presence calm but commanding. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to fill a room. He stopped cold when he saw who was sitting at the table. Sergeant Cole, he said, almost in disbelief. Darius's eyes softened for the first time that day. Captain Harris, he said quietly, nodding once. Ray looked between them, confused. You know this guy Harris turned, his expression darkening. We served together, he said. Helmand Province. 2012. Ray blinked. You served with him, Harris nodded slowly. He pulled 12 men out of a burning Humvee convoy after the ambush. Saved every one of them before the airstrike hit. He paused. One of those men was Daniel Maddox. The name hung in the air like smoke. Ray's throat worked, but no words came. Daniel, he whispered, was my brother. The room froze. No one moved. No one breathed. Darius Ghazi didn't change. But something in it turned softer, almost sad. He spoke quietly. Your brother was brave. He didn't give up. Even when the sand turned red, Ray took a step back, eyes wide. The walls suddenly felt too close, the air too thin. He ran a hand over his face. But the truth clung to him like heat. Harris's voice came out low, controlled, but filled with fury. "You pointed your gun," he said, "at your brother's savior." Ray's lips parted, but nothing came. The sound that left him wasn't a word, it was a gasp. Lucas looked from one man to the other, eyes wide, as if he'd just watched the world tilt on its axis. The light above the table flickered once, humming louder, as if it too was holding its breath. Outside the mirrored glass, a few officers had gathered, watching the impossible unfold through the reflection. In that tiny gray room, the weight of truth pressed down on everyone heavy, merciless, and real. Darius said nothing more. He just sat there, silent and still, letting the air around them do what bullets and shouting never could. You could almost feel it, the twist turning, the line between guilt and gratitude breaking right down the middle. And in that moment, every soul in that room finally understood what they'd done. The twist was about to explode, and the world was holding its breath. Captain Harris reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a weathered photograph, edges curled, colors faded by sand and time. He laid it gently on the table, sliding it toward Ray. The picture trembled under the harsh white light. Darius Cole, face smeared with dust and blood, carrying a wounded soldier through a storm of smoke and fire. Behind them, the desert burned. "That's Helmand," Harris said quietly. 12 men made it out that day. Because of him, Ray's eyes locked on the picture. His lips parted, but no sound came. Harris pointed to the man. Darius carried the uniform torn, face half covered by a medic's bandage, dog tags swinging midair. "That's your brother," he said. "Sergeant Daniel Maddox." The words hit like a bullet with no sound. Ray stared. His mouth moved, searching for something to hold on to. Darius lowered his eyes, his voice soft but steady. "Your brother was brave," he said. "He didn't deserve that desert." Something broke inside Ray, then not loud, not visible, but deep. He staggered back a step, his throat tightening. "My God," he whispered. I pointed a gun at him. The air in the room turned thin. Even Harris had to look away. Ray stumbled toward the door, pushed it open, and disappeared into the hallway. The sound that came next wasn't a word. It was the sound of a man unlearning who he thought he was. You could hear him retching in the corridor, the echo bouncing off the tile walls. Some truths don't just break hearts. The narrator's voice came low and heavy. They shatter the mirrors we live behind. Inside, Captain Harris unclipped the cuffs from Darius's wrists. The metal fell against the table with a small, final click. "You never should have been here," he said, voice trembling. Darius rubbed his wrists. The skin marked red but not raw. "I've been in worse places," he said quietly. "This one's just harder to understand." For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of the light above them filled the silence. Then the door opened again. Ray stepped back in. His face was pale. His eyes rimmed red, not just from shame, but from the kind of realization that ages a man in seconds. "I was blind," he said. Darius looked up at him. "You were scared," he said gently. "There's a difference." Ray's breath hitched. "I don't deserve forgiveness." Darius paused, studying him with that calm, soldier's stillness that made everything else fade. "No one does," he said. "We earn it." Those 4 words hung in the air, solid as stone. Harris closed his eyes. Lucas, standing at the door, swallowed hard. Even the room itself seemed to breathe differently now, like the walls had heard something holy. Ray stepped closer to Darius, still clutching the photo in his hand. The edges of it were wet with sweat. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know who you were." Darius shook his head. "You didn't need to. You just needed to see." The two men stood there, one who'd carried a brother through war, another who'd nearly erased that sacrifice in a heartbeat. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. But if you were in that room, you'd have felt it, the weight of truth settling into place, sharp and clean, cutting through everything false. Harris finally broke the silence. "The system will try to sweep this under the rug," he said, voice gravelly. "But not this time." Ray's jaw worked. "I'll tell them myself." Darius gave a small nod. "That's where earning begins. No shouting. No grand apologies. Just a room full of men standing in the wreckage of their own humanity." The camera outside the glass caught it all. Ray's trembling hands, Darius's calm eyes, Harris's steady gaze. The truth didn't roar that day. It whispered, and it was louder than any gunshot. That was the moment everything changed. The twist didn't just reveal the past, it redeemed it. And for the first time that morning, justice didn't feel like revenge. It felt like awakening. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Elena's video, 2 shaky minutes of truth, had climbed from a few hundred views to millions overnight. It played on morning shows, news feeds, and phone screens across the country. The caption she'd written, "He did nothing wrong," was now a rallying cry. CNN ran the headline in bold red, "Veteran wrongly arrested," footage from Alabama gas station sparks outrage. Clips looped on repeat, the gun raised, the tag glinting in the sunlight, the calm voice saying, "Don't stop filming." Each replay felt like a wound reopening in front of a nation that had seen too many of them. By noon, crowds gathered outside the Riverside Police Department, veterans in faded uniforms, churchgoers, college kids, even old bikers with pow patches. They stood shoulder to shoulder, waving handmade signs, "Respect those who served. Honor, not humiliation. This isn't what freedom looks like." The sound wasn't angry. It was mournful, like a hymn. Inside the building, Captain Harris was the first to face the microphones. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the cost. An innocent man was wrongfully detained. He said, "That's not a procedural failure. That's a moral one. Sergeant Darius Cole served this country with distinction. And for that, we owe him not just an apology, but change." Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Then Harris stepped aside. Darius appeared. No podium. No notes. Just him, tall, calm, wearing a plain jacket, the cross at his neck catching the light. The crowd went silent. Even the cameras seemed to lower their breath. He looked out at the sea of faces and said, "Only this: forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it stops the bleeding." It wasn't a performance. It was a truth too simple to be rehearsed. Elena watched from her living room, hands covering her mouth. When he spoke those words, she cried, not the kind of tears that come from sadness, but from release. Lucas, standing in the back of the press room, said nothing. He didn't clap, didn't cheer. He just watched the man he'd once helped handcuff and felt something inside him shift. Across town, Ray Maddox sat alone in his small kitchen, the TV flickering in the dark. The same video played again the moment he drew his gun. The anchor's voice recapped every detail, every frame. He watched himself point the weapon, eyes full of suspicion and fear. He looked at the man on TV. The narrator's voice came, but didn't recognize his own face. His reflection in the black screen of the TV looked older, smaller. He reached to turn it off, but couldn't. He just sat there, staring at the man he used to be, realizing that sometimes you don't lose yourself in one day, you just stop noticing when it happens. Outside, the protests grew. Some shouted, some prayed. But the loudest thing of all was what wasn't said, the collective exhaustion of a country that kept breaking its own promises. That night, candles lined the sidewalk outside the police station. People sang softly. Some left flowers, some left medals. And somewhere between those small flames and that quiet crowd, Darius's words began to take root. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it stops the bleeding. The next morning, the news cycle had already moved on another scandal, another headline. But in Riverside, no one forgot. The internet moved on. The narrator said, but hearts in Riverside didn't. Because once you've seen truth that raw, it doesn't leave you. It lingers like smoke after a fire, or light after thunder. Ray Maddox resigned quietly. No press release. No farewell salute. No handshake in the hallway. He just placed his badge on the captain's desk and said, someone else should wear it. Someone who still sees people before suspects. The department tried to talk him out of it, but he was already gone. Weeks later, he enrolled in a program for police officers called Bias Awareness and Response. It wasn't court-ordered. It was voluntary. The instructors were veterans, psychologists, and community leaders. They made him sit through testimonies of those who'd been profiled, detained, or humiliated. He didn't defend himself once. He just listened. He couldn't undo the day. The narrator's voice said softly, but he could face it. On the 5th week, he drove 3 hours to Arlington National Cemetery. It was raining lightly. The kind of rain that feels like confession. He carried 2 bouquets, one for Daniel, his brother, and one for the section marked Unknown Veterans. Half those graves belonged to men who'd worn the same uniform but never got the same respect. Many were black soldiers, buried without ceremony, their names barely legible on the stones. Ray knelt down, fingertips brushing the cold marble of his brother's headstone. I finally met him. Danny, he whispered, the man who carried you out of that hell. And he stopped. The rest didn't need to be said. The rain said it for him. Back in Riverside, the world had moved on, but not for Darius. He spent his days volunteering at a local veterans center, helping soldiers who'd returned home but hadn't found peace. Sometimes, he said nothing for hours, just listened. Because sometimes that's what healing sounds like, silence that doesn't judge. One late afternoon, he drove back to the same gas station where it had all begun. The sun was setting low, painting the asphalt in amber and gold. He parked beside his old pickup truck, the same one still wearing its scars. That's when he saw Ray, waiting by the pumps. No uniform, no badge, just jeans and a flannel shirt. His eyes carried the weight of a man who'd finally stopped running from himself. Darius paused by the truck door. Didn't expect to see you here, he said. Ray swallowed hard. His voice shook, but he didn't hide it. I almost killed the man who saved my brother, he said. There's not a day I don't think about that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something wrapped in a cloth, the Silver Star medal Daniel had earned posthumously. Ray held it out. He'd want you to have this, he said. You saved him. You saved me too. Darius looked at the medal for a long time. The edges caught the sunset, glowing like memory. Then he shook his head slowly and pushed it back toward Ray. No, officer, he said softly. You keep it to remember who you nearly became. Ray's eyes filled, and he didn't fight the tears. He closed his hand around the metal like a promise. They stood there for a while, saying nothing. The light stretched longer, warmer. The world around them quieted, as if it, too, needed to breathe. Two men, one forgiven, one finally seeing. Two men stood in silence. The narrator said, one, holding the weight of guilt, the other releasing it. A gust of wind moved through the gas station, lifting a few fallen receipts into the air. The moment felt sacred in its simplicity. No cameras, no crowd, no news cycle waiting to feed. Just the echo of two lives intersecting in a place where justice had once faltered. Ray looked at Darius one last time. "You deserve better that day," he said. Darius smiled faintly. "Maybe." But we both walked away with something to fix. As Ray turned to leave, the sun dipped low, catching the reflection of that silver medal in his hand. And for the first time since that morning, the light didn't feel harsh. It felt forgiving. The screen fades to quiet narration. Two men stood in silence, one forgiven, one finally seeing. And in that silence, the second emotional climax bloomed. Not loud, but éternel. The road stretched ahead like an old memory, quiet, golden, and endless. Darius Cole walked slowly, his backpack slung over one shoulder. The late sun laying a copper glow across his face. The world around him had softened. Even the cicadas seemed to hum in a lower key, as if the day itself was exhaling. He passed the little bridge over Riverside Creek, the same one he'd driven across that morning weeks ago when everything changed. The water beneath was still, a mirror of sky and scar. He stopped for a moment, leaned on the railing, and saw his reflection shimmering on the surface. A faint smile touched his lips. "You look lighter, old man," he murmured. It wasn't vanity. It was peace talking back for the first time in years. Just then, the low rumble of a car approached. A patrol vehicle, clean, new. The decals catching the last light pulled to a slow stop beside him. The window rolled down, and Officer Lucas leaned out. He wasn't the same nervous rookie anymore. His uniform looked the same, but something in his eyes had changed, steadier, humbler. "Sir," Lucas called, voice careful but warm. "I just wanted to thank you." Darius turned, the corners of his mouth lifting. For not giving up on people like me." Lucas said, "For showing me how to see." Darius stepped closer, resting a hand on the doorframe. "Then do me one favor," he said. "Teach the next one to see, not to fear." Lucas nodded, and that nod said more than words could carry. Then he drove off, the sound of the tires fading into the rustle of wind through tall grass. Darius watched the car disappear, then turned back toward the horizon. His steps were slow but sure, each one lighter than the last. The road curved past the same small gas station, the one that had once been a battlefield, and out toward the open sky. In a modest apartment downtown, Elena Vega sat cross-legged on her couch, eyes fixed on the TV. A new headline scrolled across the screen: "Veterans Grace Sparks National Reflection." Clips of Darius's calm words played again, the ones he spoke at the press conference. The anchor called it an example of dignity in the face of injustice. But Elena didn't need the reminder. She'd seen the real thing, unedited. "Enough," she whispered to herself. He didn't just survive war, he survived hate. A tear rolled down. Quiet and proud, back on the bridge, Darius paused once more, gazing upward. The American flag from the gas station fluttered high above, catching the same golden light that touched his face. For a long moment, he simply watched it move, neither saluting nor turning away, just watching like a man who finally understood the difference between fighting for a country and belonging to one. The wind brushed against his jacket. The water below shimmered again. And his reflection smiled back. Not the soldier, not the suspect, just the man who'd made it through. He'd fought his last war, the narrator said quietly. And this time, peace won. And with that, Darius kept walking down the road, toward the fading light, while the flag behind him waved in the wind. Not as a symbol of victory, but of redemption. A year later, the little gas station on the edge of Riverside didn't look the same anymore. The faded blue sign was gone. In its place, a new one shimmered under the morning sun. Cole's Corner Veterans, welcome. The parking lot, once the scene of chaos, now had benches painted by local kids, and a flagpole that stood taller than the pumps. Inside, the air smelled of fresh coffee and old stories. Elena Vega ran the place now. She'd turned a symbol of shame into a place of healing. Every Friday, she opened a small fund jar labeled, "For those who served and were forgotten." The money went to minority veterans, men and women who'd returned from war only to fight another one at home. Across town, Lucas stood at the police academy podium, his voice calm but grounded. He now taught a course called Ethics in Uniform. He spoke to young recruits about courage, restraint, and the danger of fear disguised as authority. He ended every class with the same line: "The badge doesn't make you brave. Seeing people clearly, that's what does." And sometimes, when the lecture hall emptied, he'd find Ray Maddox sitting quietly in the back, no longer in uniform, no longer avoiding mirrors. Ray had taken a new path. He now worked as a guest instructor, speaking to cadets in his rough, unpolished voice. He'd open every talk with a truth that never failed to silence the room. "I once drew my gun on the wrong man. He taught me what honor really means." There'd be no dramatics, no tears, just a pause long enough for the weight of those words to sink in. Meanwhile, Darius Cole kept his promise. He spent most of his time helping veterans readjust to life, traveling to small towns and quiet schools to speak about empathy, service, and the price of misunderstanding. Then, one crisp November morning, at the Veterans Memorial Ceremony, Darius stood at the podium in his simple gray suit. No medals, no rank, just a man with a letter in his hand and the truth in his voice. He began, "We don't need medals to prove our worth. We just need a world where no one has to beg for respect." The crowd was still. Some clapped softly. Some just stood in silence, but no one turned away. Not everyone clapped that day, the narrator said quietly. Some just watched silently, and that was already progress. When the ceremony ended, the crowd lingered longer than usual. Strangers shook hands, and among them, Ray and Lucas stood side by side, hats over their hearts. Later that night, Elena locked up the gas station for the evening. The lights went out one by one, until only the new sign glowed against the dark Cole's Corner Veterans, welcome. The narrator's voice softened to a whisper. Where once a gun was drawn, now stood a light that never went out. The camera panned up, catching the night sky, quiet, endless, forgiving. The music swelled soft strings, steady drums. And as the screen faded to black, the words appeared. Some wars end on battlefields. Others end in the heart when courage chooses compassion. Then, slowly, the logo emerged through the glow, and for a long moment, there was only silence, the kind that feels like peace finally keeping its promise. And that was the story of Darius Cole, a man who showed us that real strength isn't about fighting harder, but about choosing peace when anger feels easier. This story reminds us that forgiveness doesn't erase pain, it transforms it. It turns shame into purpose, and fear into understanding. If this story moved you, please leave a like and share it with someone who believes in second chances, because stories like this are meant to be felt. not just heard. And if you want to hear more powerful, emotional stories about justice, compassion, and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Max Stories. Your support helps our creative team keep bringing you meaningful, high-quality stories that touch the heart and remind us of what truly matters. At Mr. Max Stories, we believe that courage can be quiet and compassion can be louder than any war. Until the next story, keep listening, keep feeling, and keep the light alive.